Why do the loudest ones always seem the weakest? Why do the truly powerful often sit in silence? In this video, we'll uncover a truth they never taught you, the ability to outsmart anyone, without ever speaking a single word. This is for those who are tired of shouting in rooms full of empty men. There is a quiet violence in the man who does not need to speak. His presence, unadorned by persuasion, becomes the loudest statement in the room. In a culture obsessed with articulation, expression, and constant justification of one's value, such a man appears like a rupture in the script, a contradiction so severe, others become uncomfortable in his stillness. But this discomfort is not a flaw, it is the signal of unspoken dominance. Modern society has taught the individual to equate voice with virtue, verbosity with victory. The louder you are, the more right you must be. The more visible you become, the more powerful you seem. This illusion, because that is what it is, trains people to become noise machines. They shout opinions into voids, not because the void asks for it, but because they fear the silence. In the silence, they are forced to confront the hollowness of their convictions. This is why presence, real presence, feared, because it cannot be argued with. It doesn't enter into the dialectic. It stands beyond it, unmoved. The man who possesses true power carries it like an invisible weight. It is not decoration, it is density. When he walks into a room, he does not rush to fill it with sound. He does not need to win approval with clever words or social acrobatics. He does not compete in the arena of appearances. His very being becomes the argument. And because he does not demand your attention, you feel compelled to give it. This is not mere arrogance or performance. It is a deeper principle. Persuasion is for those who still need to be seen. Presence is for those who have already seen through the game. Persuasion says, "Believe me." Presence says nothing, but leaves others believing in you despite themselves. And what is more powerful than commanding belief without uttering a syllable? In this light, speech becomes a kind of debt. The more one speaks, the more one pays. Every word is a confession of desire, of insecurity, of hunger. Every explanation is a signal. I need you to understand me, so that I may exist more fully. But what if one does not need to be understood? What if oneself is already whole, beyond need, beyond interpretation? This is where presence becomes the final form of power. It is not aggressive, it is not submissive, it is sovereign. It does not expand outward, it draws others inward. It does not project, it absorbs. To sit in silence while others compete for attention is to reverse the flow of power. While they speak, they unravel. While you wait, you collect. Each moment of restraint becomes a moment of ascendancy. Each glance becomes a test. Each pause, a form of pressure. You will see this phenomenon in any room governed by ego. Watch how quickly people rush to fill the air when silence enters. Watch how they laugh too loudly, explain too long, contradict themselves, circle back to the same tired joke or opinion. They do not realize they are revealing themselves. In trying to be seen, they show you too much. Meanwhile, the silent figure reveals nothing and is therefore perceived as containing everything. Mystery, in this context, is interpreted as depth. Stillness is read as strength. Presence is not about posture or costumes or rehearsed facial expressions. It is an internal stability. It is the absence of craving. A man with presence does not yearn for recognition. He does not seek agreement. He may listen, but his listening is dangerous. It is not passive, it is diagnostic. He is not absorbing noise but mapping power. And because he does not try to persuade, he becomes impervious to persuasion. He is immune to performance. He is, in the truest sense, untouchable. The essence of this truth was always known, but modernity has buried it beneath layers of noise, activism, performance, and validation addiction. Look back to the ancient figures of wisdom and command, those who said little, but were followed like gods. It was not their rhetoric that captivated, it was their reality. They were embodiments, not arguments. They did not need to win over the crowd because they had already defeated themselves. And in that inner conquest, gained the capacity to dominate others without resistance. To cultivate this kind of presence is not about playing a role, it is about shedding the roles entirely. One must become intolerant of self-explanation, allergic to people-pleasing, and suspicious of the need to be understood. This process is painful, for it requires one to dismantle the very ego that hungers for attention and applause. But on the other side of that dismantling is a terrifying calm, a stillness that shakes the foundations of others. Every interaction is a battlefield, not the kind waged with swords or bullets, but with subtleties, glances, hesitations, misplaced words, and the unguarded tremors of the soul. The naive man thinks communication begins with speech, but the one who truly sees knows that communication begins long before a single word is spoken. To read others is not a social skill. It is warfare. It is the art of decoding their unspoken fragilities, extracting their patterns, and using their own revelations against them while appearing innocent. The face is a veil. The eyes are doors. The body is an involuntary confession. Most people expose themselves within seconds. Their need to be accepted, admired, or feared makes them careless. Watch their hands. Are they restless, seeking something to do? That is anxiety disguised as confidence. Observe their eyes. Do they dart, evade, stare too long? That is insecurity cloaked in aggression. Listen to their laughter. Does it follow silence too quickly? That is a cover, up for discomfort. The body is always first to betray the mask. The man who trains himself to see, not react, becomes a silent predator. While others are busy composing their next sentence, he is deciphering their intent. He listens to what is not said. He watches where they flinch when a subject arises. He notes which topics cause them to speak faster, which ones make them suddenly quiet. He stores each observation without revealing that he is watching. This is the art of war without movement. To read a man's soul without ever showing your own. In this arena, words become distractions. Most use them not to connect but to conceal. They speak out of fear, not truth. To read people, then, is to ignore what they are trying to project and instead tune into what they are trying to hide. Every exaggeration is a disguise. Every interruption is an attempt to regain control. Every unnecessary detail is a smokescreen. The wise man does not become entangled in the message. He studies the messenger. The moment you recognize someone's weakness, you possess an advantage more dangerous than physical strength, psychological leverage. If a man seeks constant agreement, you now know that dissent will unsettle him. If a woman seeks to dominate with intellect, you now know that silence will make her over-explain. If a person yearns to be liked, you now know that indifference will break their composure. This is not manipulation. This is observation weaponized. This is knowledge turned into strategy. There is no neutral space in human interaction. Every smile is either genuine or strategic. Every handshake is a test. Every pause in conversation is a moment of silent conflict. And, while the ordinary man scrambles to keep the rhythm of the social game, the man who reads others is one step ahead. He is not reacting to what is happening. He is responding to what will happen. He sees the next 3 moves, while the others don't realize they're even playing a game. To read others with precision requires first the annihilation of one's own need to be seen. You cannot perceive others clearly if your ego is still hungry for validation. If you still want to be admired, liked, or respected, your vision will always be clouded. You will project your desires onto them. You will misinterpret their gestures to suit your fantasies, but when the desire to impress vanishes, a new sight emerges cold, exact, unmerciful. You begin to see people as they are, not as they pretend to be. This sight is isolating, because once you truly see, you cannot unsee. You will notice that most conversations are performance, that most opinions are mimicry, that most people do not think, they repeat. You will recognize masks not as rare accessories, but as standard equipment. You will sense the rehearsed tone in a compliment. You will detect the envy in a friend's applause. And in romantic encounters, you will see the entire script unfold before it's played. The illusion of unpredictability will die. In its place, pattern. But to read others is not only about survival, it is about sovereignty. It gives you the power to move in any circle without losing yourself. It grants you the ability to lead without shouting, to disarm without threat, to destroy without ever being blamed. Because when you see through people, you stop fearing them. Their approval no longer dictates your behavior. Their aggression no longer provokes reaction. Their praise no longer intoxicates. They become predictable pieces in a theater you no longer need to applaud. This is why those who master this art speak so little. What is the point of arguing with someone you've already read, like a worn-out page? What value is there in convincing a person whose fears and vanities have already mapped out every answer they'll give you. Words are for the undecided. The man who sees has already decided. His silence is not absence, it is dominance in its most elegant form. In a world obsessed with speed, response, and reaction, the one who waits appears almost otherworldly. Strategic restraint is mistaken for passivity by the unthinking, but for the one who has sharpened his mind, it is the highest form of strength. To act is common, to hold back is divine. Reaction is the nature of animals. Restraint is the discipline of gods. There is something inherently unnatural in denying the urge to strike back, to prove oneself, to respond when provoked. That is precisely what makes it powerful. The superior man does not demonstrate power in how quickly he moves, but in how rarely he is moved. Every insult invites a reply. Every accusation expects a defense. Every challenge seeks an opponent. Most fall into this trap because they believe silence is submission, that not responding makes them weak or afraid. Nothing reveals a man's depth more than his ability to endure discomfort without flinching. Restraint is a test of internal stability. The shallow react, deep wait, and the deepest do not need to do anything at all. They have already won by not playing. Strategic restraint is not laziness or cowardice. It is calculation. It is the art of controlling the game by refusing to play the way others expect. It creates tension. It disrupts the rhythm. It places the burden of proof, of movement, of explanation on the other. The one who reacts first reveals more. He shows his hand. He becomes readable. The one who waits, watches, and withholds his position gains the power of ambiguity. And in ambiguity lies advantage. The restrained man lets others reveal themselves. He provokes only by his refusal to be provoked. This alone is maddening to those who crave reaction, those who feed on opposition. Their tactics lose meaning in the absence of feedback. Their aggression turns inward. They become uncomfortable in the void he creates. This is how silence becomes a mirror. They are forced to see themselves in the absence of your voice, and most cannot bear the sight. To restrain oneself is to own oneself. It is to deny the world its usual influence over you. The mob, the media, the manipulator, all rely on immediacy. They depend on you being impulsive, being caught up in the moment, reacting before thinking. But the man of strategic restraint breaks that spell. He sees the bait, but does not bite. He hears the provocation, but does not respond. He knows that not every enemy must be fought. Not every misunderstanding must be corrected. The real battle is not with the other. It is with the self. The urge to be understood, to be validated, to be right, these are chains. To break them is the beginning of intellectual superiority. Every reaction is a kind of submission. You have acknowledged the other as powerful enough to move you. But when you remain still, composed, and in control, you communicate something terrifying. I am unmoved by your presence. I am not desperate for your agreement. I do not need your understanding. In that space, you become untouchable. You are no longer part of the emotional economy. You stop being a piece on their board. You become the board itself. To master this level of restraint requires solitude. Not the kind of loneliness that stems from lack, but the chosen isolation of the self-reflective. You must know your impulses before you can contain them. You must witness your own ego rise and fall and learn not to follow it every time it whispers for attention. The mind must become an observer, not a slave. The moment you feel the heat of reaction rising, you must pause, not to suppress it, but to study it. Each pause becomes a rehearsal for sovereignty. And over time, this habit transforms into identity. The restrained man appears slow to the impatient, but in truth, he is moving on a different axis. He is playing the long game. While others rush to win moments, he prepares to win legacies. He does not need to be first to speak, first to act, first to shine. He knows that timing is more powerful than speed, and waiting is more dangerous than shouting. Because the one who waits holds the rhythm. He controls the silence that others rush to fill. And in that silence, he listens, learns, and positions himself with surgical precision. You will find this kind of man difficult to understand if you are still possessed by urgency. You may mistake him for passive or aloof. You may accuse him of coldness or arrogance. These are merely the projections of those who fear stillness, because stillness reflects the chaos they try to outrun. In truth, his restraint is not a mask. It is the absence of masks. It is what remains when one no longer needs the world to recognize him, no longer needs applause to feel alive, no longer needs victory to know his worth. The final triumph in psychological warfare is not domination nor intimidation, but enigma. To be unreadable is to be unreachable. It is to vanish from the grid of human predictability and become a void into which others cannot see, yet from which they feel themselves watched. This is the state of the sovereign individual, not merely powerful, not merely silent, but invisible in intent and immune to analysis. To outsmart anyone without saying a word is not merely to read them, not merely to withhold your reactions, but to deny them any clear perception of who you are. They cannot attack what they cannot define. They cannot manipulate what they cannot predict. They cannot defeat what they cannot even see. To be unreadable is not about deception, but about absence. You do not lie. You do not play roles. You simply allow others to project what they wish, giving them nothing in return. This frustrates them, terrifies them. They will try to classify you: cold, intense, mysterious, arrogant. These are all attempts to make you digestible. Because to leave someone without a category is to unsettle them. It forces them to wrestle with their own discomfort, rather than placing it upon you. Most people are transparent not because they choose to be, but because they cannot help themselves. Their desire to be seen, understood, and accepted forces them to reveal their values, their wounds, their desires. Even in their silence, there are patterns, predictable gestures, routine defenses, rehearsed responses to threat or praise. To be unreadable means none of these patterns are present. You become formless, and in your formlessness, you become untouchable. This does not mean being cold or distant. The unreadable man may speak, may laugh, may engage, but never from compulsion. His engagement is precise. Every word, every gesture is deliberate. He may appear warm one moment and detached the next, but there is no emotional instability in this, only strategy. He allows others to draw conclusions, only to later withdraw and leave them doubting everything they thought they knew. He is not playing a game of pretenses. He is playing a higher game, the refusal to be defined. The mind of the unreadable man is like a house with no windows. Others stand outside and speculate about what is inside, but the door never opens. Occasionally, a light might flicker, a shadow might move, never enough to form a clear picture. People become obsessed with understanding him, but the more they try, the more their own reflections haunt them. They see in him what they fear or desire most. He becomes a psychological mirror, revealing others to themselves while remaining hidden. This ability is rooted in mastery over the ego. The one who has not conquered his own emotional impulses can never become unreadable. His moods will betray him. His pride will leak through his silence. His facial expressions will reveal what his words hide. The man who has made peace with his own inner chaos becomes calm, so calm that others cannot tell whether he is amused, offended, impressed, or indifferent. That is where the terror lies. People fear the unreadable man because they do not know where they stand with him. Is he ally or enemy? Is he aware of their games, or simply uninterested? Is his silence approval or condemnation? The tension becomes unbearable, and they reveal themselves trying to resolve the ambiguity. To achieve unreadability, you must also accept solitude. Not social isolation, but philosophical aloneness. The refusal to belong to any tribe, any ideology, any collective thought pattern. You must become ideologically elusive, emotionally self-contained, spiritually opaque. You must not react in expected ways. You must not follow familiar paths. You must speak in riddles, or not at all. You must move without announcing your direction. Your unpredictability must not be theatrical, but fundamental. This frightens others not because you are a threat, but because you are not controllable. The readable man is manageable. He will respond to shame, guilt, flattery, or fear. But the unreadable man has no visible levers. You press buttons and nothing happens. You provoke him and he smiles. You praise him and he looks away. You threaten him and he waits. The world loses its grip on him. And so it seeks to discredit him, to mock him, to declare him untrustworthy, not because he has done wrong, but because he has escaped the system of emotional cause and effect. In the social economy, everyone is bidding for comprehension. Everyone wants to be legible, to be known, to be validated, to be sympathized with. But the man who becomes unreadable opts out of this economy. He no longer needs to be seen, only to see. He is not interested in being decoded, only in decoding. This is not mere psychological camouflage. It is liberation. For as long as you can be read, you can be mapped. And as long as you can be mapped, you can be cornered. But once you vanish from the map, once your motives are opaque, your rhythms unpredictable, your presence impossible to categorize, you become something else entirely. Not just a person, but a force. Not just a thinker, but a shadow with eyes. In a world addicted to noise, motion, and the compulsion to be understood, the greatest form of power is stillness. An intellect that sees but does not signal, a presence that cannot be anticipated, and a will that does not bend to provocation. To outsmart anyone without saying a word is not about dominance through volume, nor manipulation through deceit. It is about becoming sovereign in silence. You read others like maps, but you erase your own path. You anticipate without announcing. You win without playing. Mastery begins not in the display of your intelligence, but in its concealment. The world teaches you to speak, to prove, to justify, but the wise unlearn this conditioning. They realize that the loudest voice in the room is often the weakest mind, and the strongest are those who carry nothing to prove, nothing to defend, and nothing to reveal. When you read people like pages, remain unreadable like a locked book. When others react like puppets, hold your strings in silence. And when the game invites you to speak, to play, to fight, remember the one who watches without being seen already owns the battlefield.